To the outside world, Mia lived a beautiful life. At 27, she was married to Diego, a man everyone admired, handsome, outgoing, successful, the kind of husband people envied at dinner parties. Neighbors waved at him, his co-workers toasted him, and strangers smiled when he laughed. But behind their apartment door, Diego's charm faded into something colder, something crueler. At home, he didn't need to pretend. The man who brought flowers to his secretary and poured drinks for friends also delivered sharp words and slaps masked as jokes. His abuse was strategic, never in public, rarely with bruises. Instead, it came in the form of humiliation, silence, sudden bursts of anger, and a slow erosion of Mia's spirit. She had once been vibrant, always the first to laugh in a room. But Diego's words chipped away at her confidence day after day. He called her dumb when she forgot something slow, when she hesitated, ungrateful when she cried. At parties, he turned her into a joke. She burned water once, he'd say with a laugh, and the guests would chuckle, not realizing they were clapping for cruelty. Mia would smile, her cheeks burning, and disappear into the kitchen, where she could be alone with the sting. The worst part wasn't the yelling. It was the silence afterward, the kind that hung in the air like smoke choking everything. She stopped inviting friends over. She stopped speaking up. She learned how to keep the peace by making herself small. Mia no longer lived in their home. She survived inside it. Her days became predictable, silence, correction, apology, repeat. At night, she stared at the ceiling, wondering when it would get worse, because it always did. Everyone thought Diego was the perfect husband. Everyone thought Mia was lucky. And Mia? She had learned how to disappear in plain sight, how to become a ghost with a pulse waiting for a reason to hope again. Mia had mastered the art of silence. After years with Diego, she knew when to speak, when to nod, and when to disappear. But nothing could prepare her for the kind of degradation he would unleash when he had an audience. On the outside, he played the doting husband, witty, charming, confident. Yet, whenever guests filled their apartment, it was as if he saw their presence as permission to peel away another layer of her dignity. It always began subtly, a jab at her outfit, a loud sigh, when she brought the wrong wine, a snide comment about her slowness. Then it escalated. On this particular evening, the living room buzzed with laughter and cheap beer. The television played softly in the background, the table cluttered with half-eaten snacks and cigarette ash. Mia hovered near the kitchen, her shoulders tight, ears straining for Diego's tone, her internal alarm system. And then it came. The wife should fear her husband, Diego declared with a smirk, raising his voice just enough for everyone to hear. The guests chuckled, unsure whether to laugh or wince. Before Mia could react, he struck the back of her head, not hard, but hard enough. A display. Her eyes widened, her cheeks burned. "Where's my beer?" he barked, gesturing without even turning to face her. The room fell into awkward silence, all eyes on Mia as she froze. But then, like a scene out of someone else's life, the door opened. Her uncle, unexpected, uninvited, crossed the room and silently placed a beer in front of Diego. The gesture was simple, but the message was thunderous. If you've ever seen someone smile through shame, just to keep peace, comment yes below. And don't forget to subscribe. We are telling the stories that matter, the stories that speak truth. Mia didn't smile. She couldn't. Her face flushed, her hands trembled. But something in her shifted. For the first time in years, someone had silently stood between her and Diego. And in that moment, buried under shame and fear, a spark of something ancient stirred in her chest, dignity. It wasn't much, but it was enough to begin. Mia barely remembered the rest of that evening, only the humiliation. The way Diego's palm struck the back of her head, the ripple of awkward laughter from his guests, the taste of shame she could not swallow. But something shifted deep inside her after her uncle stepped in with quiet defiance, setting the beer on the table like a gauntlet. It was a small act, but in her hollow world, it echoed like thunder. That night, she sat alone in the dark kitchen, staring at her phone. Her thumb hovered over the message she had drafted days ago, her fingers trembling. She had rewritten it a dozen times. In the end, she sent only one sentence. Uncle Raphael, I think I need help. She hit send. Then she wept. The next day passed like any other. Diego went to work without a word, and Mia spent the morning cleaning mechanically, folding laundry, waiting for what she was not sure. But as evening settled and Diego opened another bottle of beer, something in her chest began to tighten. The doorbell rang. Sharp. Sudden. Diego cursed under his breath and stomped to the door. Mia stood in the hallway, paralyzed heart pounding in her ears. When the door swung open, Diego's posture changed instantly. Standing there was Uncle Raphael, broad-shouldered, gray-templed, and still bearing the silent authority of a military man. He did not smile. He stepped in without invitation, his eyes scanning the room. He saw the half-empty bottles, the cigarette smoke lingering in the air, the strained faces of the guests. He saw Mia, and in that single glance, he understood everything. Her sunken shoulders, the red mark behind her ear, the unshed tears in her eyes. Raphael walked over to the coffee table, picked up a cold bottle, and calmly placed it in front of Diego. The room went still. Diego tried to laugh, but his voice cracked. Uncle Raphael, what brings you here? Raphael looked at him and said, Raise your hand to her again, and you raise it to me. Are you ready for that? No one moved. No one breathed. And in that silence, Mia realized someone had finally shown up, and she was not alone anymore. For a long moment, the living room stood frozen guests, mid-sip, Diego mid-bluster, and Mia barely able to breathe. Raphael's words hung in the air, heavier than any threat Mia had ever heard. Raise your hand to her again, and you raise it to me. But it was not just what he said. It was how he said it. Calm. Measured. Dead serious. He did not flinch. He did not blink. His posture was that of a man who had faced war and survived. Diego, so used to towering over others with noise and false charm, suddenly looked small, almost ridiculous. He smirked, but the smirk trembled. It was a joke, he said, waving toward the half-full beer bottle. She gets too emotional, that's all. Raphael stepped forward, placing both hands on the table, his eyes locked on Diego. You think it's funny to strike a woman in front of guests, to humiliate her like a servant. Tell me, Diego, when did you become a coward? The room turned colder. One of the guests trying to dissolve the tension muttered, It's just how they are. You know couples. But Raphael didn't even acknowledge him. His focus remained fixed. Diego shifted in his seat, trying to reclaim authority, but his voice betrayed him. This is my house, he snapped. Raphael straightened. No, this is Mia's prison, and I'm here to unlock the door. Mia felt her legs weaken. Her uncle's words were like a match to kindling she had been collecting for years. All the silent suffering, the hidden bruises, some physical, most emotional, all of it ignited at once. She wanted to cry, to scream, to collapse. But instead, she stood taller. For the first time in years, she looked Diego in the eye. He stared back, searching for the woman he thought he owned, but she was no longer there. Raphael gently placed a hand on Mia's shoulder. We're leaving, he said simply. And no one, not even Diego, dared to stop them. That was the night Mia stopped being a victim. It was the night her silence shattered, not with a scream, but with a choice to walk away, and never look back. The apartment felt different the next morning. It was the same worn walls, same faded curtains, same silent hum of the refrigerator, but the air had shifted. For the first time in years, Mia woke up without dread curling in her chest. Diego was still asleep, snoring softly in the bedroom, like nothing had happened. As if her uncle had not stared him down, as if the world had not cracked open the night before and revealed who he truly was. But Mia knew better. She knew that if she stayed, nothing would change. Raphael's words still echoed in her mind. This is Mia's prison, and I'm here to unlock the door. She stepped into the kitchen barefoot, the floor cold against her skin, and stared out the window. It was cloudy, but she saw light anyway. Quietly, she opened the closet and pulled down her old duffel bag. Every movement was deliberate, her hands steady. She packed only what mattered: clothes, important documents, the necklace her mother had given her at 16. She left behind every gift Diego had ever given her, every lie disguised as love. Raphael waited in the living room, reading a newspaper with military precision, as if he were guarding a fortress. When he saw Mia fully dressed and holding the duffel, he didn't ask questions. He simply stood, took the bag from her hand, and gave her a nod. No dramatics, no pity, just silent support. They walked out without a sound. Mia glanced back only once, not at Diego, still sleeping in a bed he no longer deserved, but at the version of herself she was leaving behind. The woman who had once begged for love, who had whispered apologies through tears, who had been broken down piece by piece. She was gone now. Outside, a cab was waiting. As it pulled away from the curb, Mia felt her body exhale for the first time in years. The city passed by in a blur, but she was not looking back. She was looking ahead. Raphael sat beside her, hands folded quiet. He did not need to say it, but she knew she was free. And freedom, Mia realized, did not arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it came in silence, with a packed bag and a front door finally closing behind you. The train rumbled steadily along the tracks, carrying Mia farther from the life she once believed she was destined to endure. She sat by the window, her head resting lightly against the cool glass, watching the city shrink behind her, its buildings like distant memories she was no longer willing to chase. Beside her, Uncle Raphael sat silently, arms crossed, gaze steady. He had not said much since they boarded, but his presence was enough. He did not need to speak to make her feel safe. For the first time in years, Mia's chest did not ache from fear. It ached from release. She looked down at her hands, hands that had once trembled while folding laundry under Diego's watchful glare, hands that had served in silence, cleaned in tears, endured without question. Now they rested in her lap, still and strong. She took a breath, not shallow or cautious, but deep and intentional. It tasted like something close to freedom. As the train curved through hills and meadows, Mia began to imagine again. Not the fantasies she used to build just to survive, but real grounded possibilities. A job, a small apartment with warm light, her favorite books lining the shelves again. Maybe someday laughter shared with someone who looked at her not with disdain, but with admiration. She wasn't chasing love anymore. She was chasing herself. Raphael turned to her and gently asked, "How are you feeling?" Mia met his eyes, and for the first time in what felt like forever, answered honestly, "Lighter." He smiled, brief but genuine, and placed a hand over hers. "Good. That's the beginning." It was not a dramatic escape. No fireworks, no headlines. Just two people sitting on a train, one of them piecing herself back together, one silent guardian watching over her like he always had. Mia closed her eyes for a moment and pictured the road ahead. It would not be easy, she knew that, but it would be hers. Every step, every misstep, every win. And that was more than she had ever been allowed before. Sometimes survival feels like standing still, but healing feels like motion, like tracks beneath you, like the whole world waiting at the next stop. Weeks passed, and the rhythm of Mia's new life began to take shape, not flawless, not fast, but hers. In Uncle Raphael's quiet home, tucked in a sleepy neighborhood, with pine trees lining the road, she found something she thought she had lost: forever peace. She helped around the house, enrolled in community classes, and began volunteering at a local women's shelter. Every time she held space for another woman's pain, she felt her own scar soften. Her healing wasn't linear. Some nights the memories still woke her, but she no longer lived inside them. One crisp morning, a letter arrived. There was no return address, but the handwriting sent a chill down her spine. It was from Diego. Just one line. "Are you proud of yourself for leaving?" Mia stood at the kitchen sink, staring at the words. A breeze moved through the open window, rustling the letter like a whisper. Without hesitation, she tore it in half and dropped it into the trash. She did not need to answer. Her life was her answer. Later that evening, she sat on the porch with Raphael. The sky blushed with twilight, and a gentle silence settled between them. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" he asked. Mia nodded. "Every day. But for once, I'm not afraid of it." He smiled and they watched the sunset without saying another word. And somewhere far from where her pain began, Mia opened her journal and wrote a single sentence. "I am not what he did to me. I am what I chose to become after." If you believe in stories of survival, of reclaiming identity, of quiet strength that becomes unstoppable, comment "I'm still here" and subscribe for more powerful stories that speak truth, hope, and healing. The story is not over. And maybe it's just beginning.